We've got another great story to share with you today, an inspiring journey into local government leadership, because that's what we do here on the HaltingWinter Podcast. We tell the stories behind the titles, the unique paths into public service, and the moments that shape how these leaders show up, even when the work gets heavy. Every day, local government quietly makes modern life possible, and behind every service is a person doing work that often goes unseen. This is the HaltingWinter Podcast, and I'm Seth Winterhalter. Every week, I have the pleasure of sitting down with local government leaders from across the country that remind us where government really lives, locally, doing the work that truly matters. This is the work that builds belonging. Before we hear today's conversation, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Tyler Technologies has been exclusively serving the public sector since 1998, partnering with cities and counties to make their work more manageable, more connected, and more effective. From smarter budgeting to artificial intelligence, Tyler equips local governments with software and solutions that help leaders serve with clarity, efficiency, and impact. You can explore a variety of free resources at tylertech.com/winter. That's tylertech.com/winter. And if today's conversation resonates with you, I want to invite you to check out the Municipal Leadership Development Circle. It's a global community of local government leaders who are committed to growing together, supporting one another, and leading well in the middle of municipal pressure. You can learn more about the MLDC at haltingwinter.com/MLDC. That's haltingwinter.com/MLDC. And now, let's turn to today's conversation. My guest on the podcast today is Sabrina Cotta, City Manager in Ashland, Oregon. That's all the way to the south. You've probably never heard of it if you've only thought of Portland, but we're going to talk about Ashland today and just all the great things. And not only are you the city manager there, you are the president-elect for the Oregon City County Management Association. I love highlighting these associations and what they do for city managers and administrators, and so I'm sure we'll unpack that today. But welcome, Sabrina, to the podcast. It's great to have you on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, we're going to have fun. You have, I always love putting together the stories, kind of the outlines, right? I don't do a lot of prep for this because I love to stay curious and really listen. But man, putting your story together, you are all over the place and in so many different ways. And so I think it's going to be really inspiring to see. One of the things I love encouraging young people to at least consider local gov and not just local gov, a city, county. Obviously we want the best of the best there, but there's so many other opportunities in places that support local gov. And so there's just all this opportunity for careers that I think no one knows about or are very limited. And so it's going to be great to hear how you weave and wind through your story and how you kind of go out of local gov and into local gov and just all over the place. So it's going to be great. Let's do what we do here, though, on the HaltingWinter Podcast. Before we get to the professional accolades and just an amazing career, let's take it back to the beginning. Where were you born? And kind of tell us about the childhood that shaped you.
Yeah, so I was born in Nebraska, Bellevue, and then moved to Colorado when I was in second grade, and then mostly grew up there. My parents are divorced, so I spent time on the East Coast as well. And so majority in Colorado, some in Virginia. So just kind of back and forth there. Kind of public service runs in the family. So my dad was a police chief, public works director, and eventually a city manager. So kind of had that growing up. And my stepdad worked for a large park district in Virginia. So kind of public service, but in true, being a youth, I never really paid attention to that. And so I didn't really think about public service as I do now. I was in the Army, and when I got out of the Army, went back to college and was in political science. And I thought I was going to move into intelligence and work for a 3-letter agency at the federal level because I worked in military intelligence. But I was sitting in this public administration class I needed before graduation. And the Fort Collins city manager came in and was talking about being a city manager. And I was like, hey, that sounds cool. Never really paid attention to the fact that my dad did that. Right?
Yes.
So yeah, I kind of orientated out of like thinking of the federal level and then back to thinking more locally.
Okay,
So
this is
yeah,
going to be great because, again, this is so fascinating that, again, you grow up in multiple, like you have multiple people in your inner
yeah,
circle that are in public, life and local gov, and yet it's kind of there, but it's not. And so that's going to be cool to unpack that. And I'd love to hear, maybe I'll just start here and we'll kind of, out of the timeline. But now that you are a city manager and
yeah,
you look back to how kind of you were raised, and especially because it seems like it wasn't a direct connection to, oh, this is a career. It was more you kind of were you experienced the realities of parents that were in that field. And it's one of the things I highlight is there is no work-life balance for leaders of local gov because a city
yeah,
never sleeps. And the role is so, not only is there's so much on the plate and there's evening meetings, there's weekend events that are going on, and then there's chaos. There's, storms and things that, right, they don't plan themselves in the 9 to 5. They just
right,
happen, and they're always at midnight. The tornado comes at midnight.
sure, yeah.
And so you got to though experience that as a kid without kind of the awareness of what it was on paper, but the effects of it, the feel of it.
Right.
Now, as a city manager, how does that influence you as you connect both yourself and try to stay healthy? I usually ask this question at the end, but I'm gonna ask it up front. How do you do that? Was there anything you kind of pulled away from your childhood that shapes you now and how you engage your life and your relationships?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think, I have a 7-year-old daughter. And so, it's hard to, like last week or the week before, we had 3 night meetings in a row. Like I was just toasted, right? Because it's not like when you have meetings in the evening, your day doesn't still start at like 7:30, right? You're going. And so, I think reflecting on this now, my dad did a really good job of just like, he didn't really bring work home. It wasn't until I was kind of older and engaged that he would like kind of talk about what he did more when I was interested. But, he really made a point, like he would show up. I remember him showing up in a suit, like jogging around while I was like at a cross country meet in high school, like trying to make it work. I was lucky enough that my stepmom stayed home with us. So we always had kind of a parent to, hold down the fort. But, he would be gone and get home at like 1 a.m. And, that was just a part of it. And so I guess now, like thinking about it, it just seems normal to me that like that's a job, like that's part of the job, because I grew up with it. But I also think, that example kind of showed that you need to put an effort to kind of have boundaries and not let it become all consuming, because it's very easy because it never stops, right? There's always the next thing to get done, the next emergency, the next crisis, the next problem, the next project, the next council, hope, dream to achieve. And so I think, your family will be there long after this is done. And so that's what's important. And also, like, it's mentally taxing to, you make 15 decisions an hour sometimes. You're just trying to keep things going, keep the wheels on the bus. And so I think having stuff outside of work, finding hobby, like I like to do I do watercolor painting and like I crochet, like I'm really just 80 years old on the inside, like, but I think having things like that are important because otherwise you're just it's easy to just be all consuming.
I love that. I've been asked multiple times now to do this keynote called the strategic pause. And it talks about that. How do you have pauses both in your workday and in the rhythms of life, evenings, weekends, et cetera, where you do something? And what do you do? And we talk about hobbies. And I just find it so unique that people that work with their minds oftentimes gravitate or should consider gravitating towards things like painting, crocheting, things with your hands that can kind of free your mind from just because, like you said, you have all this. It's just, especially for I think the best of the best leaders in local gov, you're just curious and your mind's always spinning on, okay, that thing and that thing. And it's not like you don't have 10,000 things to actually distract you from. So, okay, I want to get to that because you said something too. Boundaries. And I think that's one of the things that, oh no, boundaries, but I think it's so practical. Well, we'll get to that. Let's talk about is you're a child, and this is really unique too, because you have different parents on both sides of, so you're getting Virginia, Colorado, you're getting kind of a unique view of kind of America and the world. I always say that the U.S. it's like multiple countries inside of itself. The West Coast has a culture, as we'll talk about in Ashland. Midwest has a culture, East Coast has a culture, and then you have South, North. So what were you thinking as you're growing up and you're thinking about career? Obviously, the Army is going to be where you land, but you, I think, do you go to Colorado State University before you go into the military, or do you start with the military right out of high school?
I went for a year before and then joined the military and then went back.
Okay, so what took you, what were you thinking, and tell us about that choice to go into the military? Especially, you don't hear that usually. You go into a year of college and then that. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so part of it was just I didn't have any money to pay for the second year of college. So, I mean, it's always, I'm proud that I served, and it's a really unique experience, and kind of really opened my eyes to different points of view and different ways of doing things. But like at the crux of it, I was like, GI Bill seems great. And so that really led me to join. And then, part of it was I was interested early on in like public safety and being like military police. But then I ended up testing. They have a test when you join the military in a category that led to military intelligence. And I got to go to language school. So I went in like a completely different direction, which is, I think, a good lesson in kind of like being open to opportunity, because I got to do some cool things. And so when, I got out of the military, it was just always very important for me to finish my degree. And so I made a point to not just become a consultant or something else, but to go back to school, and went back to Colorado State because I still had friends there. And political science seemed like a natural fit. I tried journalism for a while, but you kind of bounce around, and so.
Okay, so in the military, I want to go back to the military because it is, like you said, you took this test and you end up kind of intelligence. It says cryptologic linguist. I probably even butchered that.
Yeah.
What in the world? This is where, again, I love the military. And just to highlight, some students may be out there going, how am I going to pay for it? Especially college now and the price. Military can be a great way to go. And I think we just kind of, we make assumptions. We go, military, I got to, go, shoot people, or there's only, we just think of soldiers. There's so many facets, especially nowadays. Tell us about what did a linguist, what was that study like? What was that work like?
Yeah. So, you take another test if they identify you for this lane of work and kind of your aptitude for learning languages. And it's, English is actually the hardest of the languages. But I tested to learn Persian Farsi, which is like middle. And so then you kind of just head down this path to learn that language, to be able to both, read, write, and speak it, with the idea that you're going to operate in that language. And I will say reading and writing are much easier than speaking, just generally. So that is not like anything I thought I would be doing. And, it's, I joke with my husband because he was in the military as well, and he learned Arabic, and he spoke at country for a long time. And he's very good at Arabic, where I have dumped all of the Farsi. Like I've replaced that with other knowledge.
You only have so much mental bandwidth, right? The language can take up a lot of RAM space.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is you come out of that experience and you're thinking even, right, federal work, continue in intelligence. You end up at Colorado State, you finish your degree, but then you end up in Alaska. What in the world?
So I married an Army boy who was stationed in Alaska. So I went up to Alaska, and then got a job at the state courthouse, which was kind of my first. So it was between that and like working at an apartment complex with like a rental agreements. And so I was lucky enough to get that job. And that was like my first foray into public service at the state level. And it was really interesting. Well, one, Alaska is intense, just as a state to live in. But the courthouse, you have everyone, like people getting married to people paying fines to people there for much more serious business. And so it was like working in customer service was quite the variety.
Yeah, it's so wild. Again, you serve as a deputy clerk, so it gives you like this idea of clerking, which is a whole world. I've spoken at a number of clerk conferences over the past couple of years, and I just love clerks because I think that they people just see them as secretaries, and they play such a pivotal role in local government.
I mean, they keep us on the up and up and organized and keep everything moving forward.
And I love that they're kind of the holders of the history of the organization. And as a history nerd, I love that. And again, you're saying you're in Anchorage, Alaska, which I keynoted their big 75th conference, their annual conference for the League of Cities. And it is just like you say, this is wild. People like come to this conference via snowmobile, and I think like they rode polar bears. Like it's a different world up there. That is like it's like Mars. Like it's so wild, and the things they have to deal with, the challenges will make some of us in the lowland go, oh, maybe we don't have it so bad.
Yeah, recently I was up at the Northwest leadership in Sitka, and I love Alaskan city managers because like their problems are not our problems. They're like, well, we got cut off, the road got cut off for 8 months. And I'm like, oh, okay. Just like so extreme. And they're just like so nonchalant about it. They're like, I have road access. I'm like, okay, that's great. That's a big deal. And, Alaska it's unique that way. And it really highlights that like just kind of the human experience can really vary depending on where you are.
It's wild. We had on Becky Pearson, who I think she just recently switched. She was the municipal manager for Anchorage, and she was talking about how just their building season is so short because of the weather and because of daylight. And it's just like, you don't think about that down here. It's just like, I think about it. Well, you in Ashland, the Pacific Northwest, like I complain all winter that we get like, such short daylight hours, but it's a different world up there.
But you do get daylight. So
Oh, it's so wild. So you serve in that, and while you're up there, you get your MPA at the University of Alaska. What made you get your MPA? What was it, that clerking and kind of that exposure to local gov? What was going on there?
Yeah, I think that was kind of at one point I thought I wanted to go to law school, but I was really liking local government, and just that felt like a natural step. I just love school and learning. And so, my husband was deployed. I had a lot of free time while he was gone. And the program in Anchorage, I think, was unique in that it had a lot of practitioners teaching. So it was less theoretical and more kind of boots on the ground, you could say, experience around public administration. And so I really enjoyed that. And funny enough, there's he used to be the North Plains city manager, Andy. He's in Beaverton now, but we were in the same MPA program at the same time. And we just like randomly, like 2 years ago, saw each other at a conference. So we're like, wow. So it's a small world. But yeah, I think that program was great because you kind of, you got to pick what you wanted to do for your thesis. So I did like, problem-oriented policing. I got to go right along with Anchorage PD, and just, it was just a really fun way to kind of expand my knowledge around like the nuts and bolts of like how to actually operate in local government.
One thing I've learned from hosting hundreds of conversations with local government leaders is this: the challenges never stop changing. So many conversations seem to come back to the same question. How do you keep moving your community forward when there's never enough time, money, people, or certainty? You're always looking for ways to work smarter, make better decisions with limited resources, and prepare for what's coming next, all while still delivering the services your residents count on every day. That is why I'm grateful for partners like Tyler Technologies. Tyler has put together 3 free ebooks specifically for local government leaders that I think are well worth your time. One explores how your team can use AI to eliminate repetitive work and improve your efficiency. Another highlights how cloud technology can help modernize your operations. And the third focuses on how your organization can remain resilient, even when things don't go according to plan. You can download all 3 ebooks for free, along with several other resources, all at tylertech.com/winter. Again, tylertech.com/winter. And if you're going to be attending the NACO annual conference, it's in New Orleans this July. Stop by booth number 231 and connect with the Tyler team. They would love to learn more about your community and the unique challenges that you are facing. While you're there, if you'd like to see how AI is being used in an actual government setting, make sure to attend the Technology Innovation Forum. It's featuring Fulton County and Tyler Technologies. You're going to hear how they are putting these tools to work in their day-to-day operations and what they're learning along the way. To learn more about AI that works to make your county or your city government far more efficient, visit tylertech.com/winter. Now, let's get back to the conversation. Yeah, I love how you said that the MPA in many of the programs is very hands-on. It's very it's tied with an internship. It's time to go out and experience local gov again, because local gov is so expansive. There's so many, and I love the internships. We have had many guests on who have been a part of really solid internships where they don't just sit in a file room in the back doing nothing, or sit in just one department. Really great city managers who are getting these MPA students make sure that they get kind of a variety of the local gov experience with it, which I think is so awesome, because you can really find there's a place for you. With you have a passion. And again, if you're a student, you go, oh gosh, a master's degree, that just sounds like a lot of book work. I'd encourage you. An MPA is a great place, and you might find there's a lot of areas to find your passion and your purpose. So you finished that. Let's see. What do you, then you're going to go to Tucson. You're going to go from absolute cold and some, what I kind of think is misery, to just like heat and crazy heat.
Yeah, that was an interesting transition. We drove into town and we're like, oh, what have we done? It's the desert. But I was lucky enough to be hired as a management intern for the city manager's office there. So, orientating towards local government still. And Tucson had a pretty robust program at the time. I don't know if they still have it, but they hired, 2 or 3 management interns, and we got paid a salary and health insurance, just like a real job. And so that was great. And it was really fun because, like you said, you weren't just in a file room. I was assigned to internal audit, which seems maybe not everyone's cup of tea, but they didn't do just financial auditing. They did performance auditing. And so this is when, Baltimore was really kicking off with their performance measures. And so the deputy city manager at the time was like, I want you to come up with performance measures for the city of Tucson. And so I was like, okay. So I did that, and that was fun. And then I got to work with the water and wastewater utilities, which were a joint city-county effort on a big study. And that really kind of led me to my second master's degree, because you can't keep me out of school. Because water policy was just such this fascinating area that I had never looked into before. And so that was really interesting to navigate, just kind of the value of water, which I think we kind of all take for granted.
Absolutely. And the water world in California, Arizona, talk about I dated someone in the water world, and the water rights, I was just like, what in the world? What is going on? What is this?
A crazy market. Yeah.
It is nuts. But it opens your eyes and then it opens your eyes, the science and the data being collected of just these reservoirs and where water is and how it's flowing and what the needs are going to be. The complexities that people are managing. So when we think about local gov, do they need more money? Trust me, local gov is trying to stretch the dollar to try to figure out how to bring these modern day, and not just modern day, the services that especially if you live in an urban suburban environment, a rural person could probably figure it out, right? But urban suburban, if I don't have water, what am I going to do? I don't know how get water. It's crazy.
Yeah. Our deputy public works director here, he's he said this multiple times. He's like, the most important thing we do is wastewater. If that shuts down, this town is unlivable within days. Right. And so I think it's just all these little things that we do at the local level that, you don't notice, which is good. Like, we don't want you to notice. We don't want you to have a wastewater problem. That's not ideal. But like, the tap turns on, the lights turn on, the toilet flushes, like, we take all of that for granted, but like, that's essential to the way that we live our lives,
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't get the parades and the applause that it should. And
Right.
yet I think that's why I love this podcast and just shining the spotlight on it. The knowledge that you are providing, those services that are essential for today's way of living. There is value there, and I think there is worth intrinsically. Okay, so you mentioned you've got to get another, you do another master's degree. You're just doing all this.
Full disclosure, I went back for a PhD and didn't make it. I dropped out. So.
But you
I'm
did
a PhD dropout.
Well, I always think too, I came to this conclusion because I'm addicted to, I have multiple master's degrees, and I did a pre-doctorate, a specific master's degree because I knew a doctorate I wanted to get. And I tapped it. It was during COVID, and they went to virtual, and I wasn't into virtual. I wanted in-face discussion and kind of, but then I started saying, like, I do think, I wish that we weren't so degree focused. I wish that we could, I would encourage people just to go back and take a class and continue to expand your mind. And I hope that maybe we have a shift where, especially because now we do have a shift, for generations before, you'd get a degree, you'd work in one field your whole life. And now people change so much that I hope that we can kind of go, I don't have to go back and get a degree. I just kind of want to dabble, and maybe and who are you in your 30s and then in your 40s to go, man, learning in that education kind of environment can kind of help you see some new areas of interest and continue to grow. So I love that.
Yeah. I have a family member who went back to law school and became a lawyer after he retired. And so he had this whole career, and he just always wanted to be a lawyer. And so he went to law school, and he was in law school with all these young adults, right? And he was 65. Like, he was just like, I just want to do it. And then he became a lawyer for like a couple of years and then retired again. But he was just like, I just wanted to do it. And like, I always think about that as like, you're never defined or like stuck,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially for Americans who we find, I always say, you introduce yourself. Usually the first question you ask someone is, well, what do you do? And sometimes we can become this human doing that's only known for that thing. And we get so tied into, well, that's my identity. How can I change? And it's like, and there's a lot of people that are doing jobs they don't really like. And that's why I say, hey, a lot of people are in the private sector grinding out for bigger paychecks. And I say, money's nice, but money doesn't all do everything. And local gov has some decent paychecks. It may not be as great as the private sector, but I think they're decent. And you get to do real missional work. Like, you get to feel good about doing, I think, work that makes a difference in people's lives and communities. And so.
Yeah, no, it's true. I had a council member today tell me, like, you'd be a great CEO in the private sector. And I was like, yeah, maybe. But like, I like that there's a broader mission here, right, than just like shareholder profit.
Exactly. Oh, exactly. Okay, so you've been in Alaska. Now you're in Arizona, and when you were in Alaska, you're working for the kind of the court system, which is a whole different kind of a beast up there. Then you get to work for a city in Tucson. Your next thing is going to be working for Pima County, and you're going to be doing something in the Department of Community Development and Neighborhood Conservation. Tell us about that, because that sounds really real fascinating.
Yeah, so that was just kind of a nice stopover while I was looking for a more permanent position in the world. And so I got to go in kind of temporarily and help with two things. One was their audit, so that still persists. So they were having a state audit of some of their grant programs. So gathering kind of all of the necessary documents for that. They passed. They're welcome. No, I'm just kidding. So they did a great job. But also just they had a couple of programs where they provided, low income energy efficient updates. They provided water towers for some of the more rural communities. So going out and kind of helping manage some of those projects, which was, for someone who had been mostly an indoor cat in terms of local government, it was fun to go out, though less so in the Arizona summer, and see some of the, actual like construction of like some of these projects. And just, counties and cities are partners, but they have very different directives and obligations at times. And so it was interesting to shift from the city to the county that way, and have more, a public health focus kind of than I had before.
Yeah, it's so fascinating to see the various aspects and how city and county, how there is some tie over, but there's unique separations too of what they provide and what they're doing. So from Arizona, again, we're going to take a really weird detour and we're going to go to Illinois, and you're going to work for another county, Lake County. This is north of Chicago. It's right, north of Chicago along the shores of Lake Michigan. Population, I think, in that county is like 718,000. So what was a budget analyst doing in what kind of work was that in Illinois? And what was it like to go to, again, a different part of the United States?
Yeah, I think, for us, like being in the military, like new locations are not scary. It's just kind of an opportunity to try a new place on for size, kind of. And so Illinois was interesting. It was too much for me, I would say. Even the lake effect snow where we live. But yeah, working for the county, as a budget analyst, it was all financial. So it was, working with departments to prepare their budgets. And so, money is how the world turns, kind of, same for local governments. And so helping, departments understand their budgets, understand what programs they're trying to achieve, and then, getting the directive from the county administrator on what direction we're going. And so, some of that was, how much cost recovery are we getting in like our planning department, through fees, for example, like what's the appropriate level? Are we covering what we want to cover? And so a lot of analysis.
So you're doing budget analyst work in Illinois, and you're getting snowdrift and you're freezing, and you take this little hiatus now for a few years. You're going to go work for I think it's like Big Dog Running. You're going to be a coach with running. Tell us about what was the detour? Maybe help us. Was it were you just needing a distraction? Was it an opportunity? Were you tired of local gov and you were like, oh, the Chicago weirdos? What was going on?
No, the Chicago weirdos were great. I really loved my boss in particular, Patrice Sutton. She's now the administrator for Lake County. She was a deputy finance director when I worked under her. But getting a local government job when you're moving every couple of years, not under your kind of will, doesn't work very well. And so I just decided to take a break while he finished his military career, since he was going to be kind of the dominant person dictating where we went. And so I was a big runner at the time. And so I was just like, what would be fun? So that's what I did.
I love it. Well, again, this is one of the realities of being married when you're trying to do local gov. Yeah. And I think this is one of those tensions, like you say, if you're having to move and again, a lot. And it's not just, I think, too, it's state to state. And again, a little easier in the private sector where you can just kind of mold into new companies and whatnot. Yeah. It is a little challenging, but what a cool opportunity to kind of take a hobby and take a season and do some fun things. And so you moved to Colorado, the city of Colorado Springs. So did you move to Colorado because of the military, or now was it Sabrina's time? Now was Sabrina making time?
Now it was my time. So my husband retired, and we moved back to Colorado because that was kind of home. And we didn't really know what to do. So we went on this huge national park tour, and I worked at a running store because that's what I had been doing. And then I kind of had the realization that I can go back into local government if I want, because now, we don't have kind of this need to move every few years. So I applied for a legislative analyst position that came up with Colorado Springs, and I got it, which was awesome.
So tell us, because this is a unique, the legislative analyst role. I don't think we've had someone on who's been in that role. That's kind of a unique role because I think it's more with the electeds.
Yeah.
Tell us
so
about
Colorado Springs has a strong mayor form of government. And so the mayor has a chief of staff and there's the administrative side. But the way it's set up there is the council as a body also has staff. So there was kind of the head legislative aide, and then there were two analysts kind of under her, and we would do special projects for the counselors. So, part of what they had 21 committees. So acting as staff liaisons to the various committees, attending, those regional meetings and the counselors stead, and helping them however they wanted, really. So when they had ideas, we would research for them or, help kind of move those ideas around, and then work with the administrative staff on like the strategic plan side and things like that.
Fascinating. And then you take on a couple different roles, innovation and sustainability analyst, and then this interim strategic plan and performance administrator, which you kind of already mentioned you had done some performance kind of analyst work. And so, and I think that would be really interesting, kind of some of the lessons you learned, because it's one of the things I think is important for local gov, where one of the mottos, maybe the unspoken motto that's highly spoken, is we just do it the way it's always been done. We do performance reviews just so we can give you your COLA. It's not like we're not a private sector. We don't have competition. So there's no really need to be performance minded. Right. And I always push back on that because I think people find worth and value in raising the standard. So what was that like? What did you do in those unique roles to build performance, to analyze it and study?
Yeah, I think one of the things that was unique to Colorado Springs that was stolen from the city and county of Denver, because no one ever has any new ideas, right? We just steal the good ones and pass them around. Was kind of, it was called the Ascent Academy, but it was, teaching line level staff process improvement. So I think, sometimes we miss the opportunity of asking the people who actually do the work if they have ideas on how to make it better. And so there was this whole program that I got to, train the trainer, and then got to teach on how, you can kind of have ownership over your process and make the recommendations to your supervisor. And Colorado Springs had a program where, like, if you could show cost savings or, how it improved the organization, sometimes you got some of the money that was saved by that process. Like, you got a bonus, you got recognized. And so I think, it's a really good way to think about things, because I think you always look to the city manager or the supervisor to have the answer. And we're often so removed from the actual nuts and bolts and ins and out of like what's actually happening, is that we're no longer the subject matter expert on anything. We're just know enough to be dangerous often, right? And so that was really formative in terms of like asking the question of, why do we do it this way? Should we do it this way? Are we still the best ones to do it this way? Because things change at a rapid pace, and government's not always good at keeping up or adjusting. And so asking that question is important. And then with strategic planning, having a roadmap for what you want to achieve, is easy to let everything be the priority, and then you kind of lose what's actually important. Nothing's a priority. You're spread thin. And so I think having something to crystallize for everyone kind of what the focus is and orientate that way, and then have it be a living document that you're, have a way of getting feedback from your partners and community and staff on how are we actually doing with moving towards those things, is important, because it's so easy to create a plan and then put that plan on the shelf with other plans and then never execute on it because you're concerned with the day-to-day so much.
Totally. Oh, you just hit like two of the big things that like I'm always yelling about and trying to help with. And I don't know if you've read the book Turn the Ship Around. It's by David Marquette. He was a military. He was the captain, or I don't know what the positions are, admiral, whatever he was, of a sub. And he took over the USS Santa Fe, which was like at the time the worst performing sub in the entire fleet. Oh, wow. And the way it's a story of how he turned around the culture there. And just like you said, he pushed everything as far down as possible and gave ownership to say, I don't know what's going on. I'm here in the control room. Yeah. And he said, you need to be able to make decisions. And the way to do that, then back to the strategic plan, is this is the mission. This is what we're trying to accomplish. Do you know the mission enough to then make decisions to get us there? So it was a powerful story. It's a great read. We read it in our leadership program, but okay, this is fascinating. So then you're in Colorado, and then you work for Pueblo West Metro District. What is that? And again, these are highlighting these kind of districts. There's water. It's not a water district, I don't think, but these other government services, I guess. So tell us about that.
Right. Yeah. So the person I worked under with strategic planning moved to be the district manager. And so then a position came up there, and I applied because I liked working with that leader. And it was kind of an opportunity to be a leader, a director, and have staff and make an impact that way. But yeah, Pueblo West Metropolitan District, it was basically a city that had never formalized. It was a special district. And so it's more rare in Oregon. I don't think there are any, but there's maybe 2 in Colorado, but they're, kind of full service districts where it was, there was parks and water and wastewater and streets and roads. And so kind of all of the services you associate with the city, but had never incorporated. And so, we contracted with the sheriff for public safety. So there are some differences there, but operated very similarly to a city, operating off property tax, but had a lot of agreements with the county as well for services. And so more familiar to everyone is like a water district or a fire district, where it's one service that has a levy within your tax that supports and funds that service. This was the same way, only many services. So I did internal and administrative services. So I oversaw facilities and fleet and the clerk, procurement, risks, just kind of the stepchildren of government, the ones that serve the public.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So yeah, that was really interesting. And it was going from Colorado Springs, which was pretty urban, 500,000 population almost. It's like 500 square miles or something, to Pueblo West, which was very rural, 42,000. That was an interesting transition. I had an office that I moved into that was in the Public Works building. There was a rattlesnake in the wall the first day. So like the Public Works director walks by with a shovel. I hear this banging and I'm like, what is happening? He's like, snake got in. I'm like, what? Okay.
Just another day in Pueblo West.
Another day. So yeah, it was just a different way of working. I didn't realize how cush I had it in Colorado Springs until I was hanging out with the snakes. But yeah, there were good people to work with there. It was, interesting, different challenges that way, being a smaller organization and leaner. I think, when you're bigger, there's just more capacity for things. So that was definitely different.
I have this unique pleasure, this unique opportunity to meet with thousands of local government leaders from across the nation every year through conferences and workshops and the podcast. Just these interviews, these conversations are just so insightful. And one of the things I have learned about local government leaders is this: the best leaders are lifelong learners, not because they have all the answers. It's because they understand that leadership, that journey of leadership, is never finished. Every challenge, every difficult conversation, every budget season, every organizational change or disruption is another opportunity to grow. That's why this summer we're doing something different inside the Municipal Leadership Development Circle. We're launching a special summer series called Stories That Shape Leaders. You know that every week I take a best-selling book, usually a business book, and we break down its insights and apply them to local gov. This summer, we're taking biographies, memoirs, timeless leadership books that don't necessarily fall into those typical business, culture, strategy kind of genre. And we're going to explore the lives, the decisions, the failures, challenges, the lessons of leaders who navigated incredible adversity, who had to build trust when hope was fleeting, who inspired others not only to dream but to take action, and who left a lasting impact. Leadership isn't shaped just through strategies and frameworks alone. It is shaped through stories. Stories that challenge assumptions, stories that expand our perspective, stories that help us become the leaders our communities need us to be. When you join the MLDC, you unlock the entire summer series, but you unlock even more. You unlock the weekly leadership content, the live mastermind sessions, the nationwide community of local government leaders, and all the MLDC resources, not just for the summer, but for the rest of 2026. If you are looking for a place to continue growing this summer while connecting with leaders who understand the unique challenges of local government, I would love to invite you to join us. Learn more at haltingwinter.com/MLDC or simply use the link in the show notes. Now, back to the conversation.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up. Yeah, because I was a pastor for a while, and I was a pastor of a very large church, and
I go to conferences and speak, and people will be like, well, you can't relate to us. Your church is 15,000 people. You've got, more staff members than we have parishioners. And I said, yes, but there's different beasts for different, and yes, I have some benefits that you don't have, but you also have some benefits that I don't have anymore. But I think one of the things is the smaller the organization, like you say, the more hats you wear. Mm-hmm. And what's unique in local gov is that you have present day realities you're trying to accomplish, but you're also trying to push into the future and plan for the future. And that can be one of the things that gets challenging at these smaller places is there's so much to do. Are you able to plan, especially not only with economic development and those things, but infrastructure that, and we kick the can until then it's like, now we have no choice. We have to fix this because it broke, and it's $1 billion to fix it. Like, it's just these are kind of the unique things in local gov. Yeah.
Well, and it's hard too. Like you said, you have to thread the needle. Like, you have to care about the community right now, but also the community 30 years from now. And that's it's hard, for our elected officials to have that viewpoint because, they're getting, talked at by the community that's here right now. But a lot of the decisions they're making will impact, the community members far into the future, and especially around large infrastructure projects like that, having the kind of fortitude and willingness to look into the future like that is an important part of local government.
Yeah. And I think too, even in the, I heard, I was talking with someone the other day that was chatting about just some, older retirees in their community that were kind of complaining about, well, I don't, use the library, or I don't have kids in school anymore, so I don't want to pay for this. Right. It's like, gosh, man, I just wish we weren't so selfish. I just wish we kind of would remember the benefits that we had, that we encountered, and to say, hey, how can we, this is community. Right. And I think that's kind of, the stories that bring us together, that create belonging. That's kind of the heart of this podcast, is remember local gov. And that's the tension. Electeds go, I'm only here for 4 years in this role or whatever. It's just like, but all of us have to think about the next generation and what's coming, because we want this to be a great place for a long time. So
and someone's got to take care of you in your old age, and you probably want them to be educated. Just a thought.
That's a good thought. How in the world do you end up in Ashland, Oregon? Because that's going to be the next stop.
Yeah, so it was kind of time I wanted to make the transition into, being a city manager. That had been kind of the orientation. And so, when we were thinking about doing that, it kind of opened up to like, well, that means we're moving. So where do we want to live? And we've always liked the Pacific Northwest. And so we kind of orientated this direction. And I actually was a finalist to be a county administrator in a county north of here on the coast. And the person doing the recruitment for that was also recruiting for Ashland. And so I applied for Ashland because they told me that I should. And I was not the selected finalist for the city manager, but the city manager they did select reached out and asked if I'd be interested in being his deputy. And I was. So then I came here.
So you come in the deputy city manager position, but on here is interim human resources director, interim finance director. Yeah. It's kind of these, tell us about the deputy city manager role. Is it just you get told what to do and it's a new day every day and all these new roles, or was that because of the circumstances? What was going on there?
Yeah. So, when the city manager came, and then I came shortly after, Ashland had been going through a lot of transition. It had lost quite a lot of staff. It had just had kind of a rocky few years. And so when the new city manager came on, I think, whenever you have leadership change, good, bad, indifferent, there's always some sort of turmoil with that. And so he called when we were like packing up, and he's like, hey, the HR director has moved on, so we're going to have you do that when you get here. I'm like, well, okay, well, moving truck's here, so we're still going to go. Opportunity. So yeah. And then when I got here, we had been missing a finance director, but we had local talent kind of come in and contract with us to help, but they had decided, they had come to the end of their contract. And so it was like, well, we also need you to act as the finance director. So at some point I was like, I've amassed too much power, right? This is too much. And so we recruited and found some people to take that over. But, as deputy, it was kind of just thrown in to stuff. The city manager and I had kind of portfolios in which we were working with certain departments. And, he was working on some bigger projects and I was kind of focused on the day-to-day operations, but it was great because I, got to do union negotiations and stuff that I wasn't overly familiar with coming from Colorado, where there's not a lot of unions, to Oregon, where there's a lot of unions. It was a quick learning curve fire hose situation with a lot of it. But the great thing about Ashland is there's just a lot of really excellent staff members and it's a really cohesive team and everyone's just kind of making it work. They're flexible and open to new ideas and they've never been overly concerned if I ask why are we doing it this way or can we try it? And so I've always really appreciated that about the team I get to work with here.
So you get thrown into the fire. You're in these different, you're hired to be the deputy, but you get thrown to human resources, finance, and then guess what? We're just going to throw you in and ask you to become the acting city manager, and that's got to be fun. And then you actually become the city manager in August of 2024. So you're about to celebrate 2 years. Congratulations. Whoa. I don't know what part of the story you want to. This is just crazy. It's a crazy story, but it's one of those two. I just want to encourage maybe some young people who say, and maybe not young, but you say, I want to be a city manager, but I'm waiting for that one to open up. But I love that you said, hey, I'll take the deputy city manager role. And it seems like it was almost a blessing in that because you were moving to a new state. Again, you said unions agreements allowed you to not have to wait. The city manager role is just one of enormous weight. Because I call it, you're walking the municipal tightrope, trying to deal with what I call the three-headed snake of you've got electeds, you've got staff, and you've got community. And you're really the lightning rod position of that. And all those have different heads of that snake, right? It's like you have, how many electeds do you have in
7?
7. So you got 7 heads there. They all think different. You got 21,000 people that live in Ashland and they all want their different things. And then you've got, a staff. And so it is a unique role. What was it like to then become the city manager? Now you're in the role that you aspired to and it pretty quickly in your time.
Yeah. So at first I wasn't super jazzed about the idea because I think the deputy is kind of a sweet spot just for all the reasons you said. You get to kind of do the fun stuff without being the focus. And, when you're the city manager, I think something I didn't fully appreciate when I eventually took the job is you become a public figure and you kind of have this persona that may or may not be related to you, who you actually are, right? It's kind of the perception of who you are. And so at first I was a little resistant, but then, after a while it was I had been acting or interim for so long that, the idea of kind of slowing down all of this progress we had made and all of the projects that we had in play was just not super exciting to me. And so it was if council is kind of willing to learn with me as we go, then let's just do it, And so we just did it. And here I am.
I love it. Well, again, you've already told us in your story, you're a brilliant woman and you've had this unique experiences all over the place to bring that to, I love that you bring all this. I love that about city managers. Usually it always it impresses me, and maybe that's, it shocks me, maybe that's a better word, that how many city managers don't go through the kind of the normal track of city management. I think it's of all the hundreds I have now interviewed, it's less than 10% who, got their undergrad in the poli-sci, got their MPA, went and worked in a city management office as an analyst, and then climbed the city management tree, and then, You'd think that that's the way it is. And it's actually not. That's why I love this podcast. Most of your stories weave into these random, and all of a sudden you just end up there and it's what? But I think that's good for city management. One of the things, and I want to dive into Ashland specifically, but you mentioned it and I want to go back to this. You said that that role, the city management role is unique. And the city manager is really an apolitical, it's there to do the will of the council in a professional way. Because the electeds aren't professionals. They really have no idea. I always say electeds really have no idea even if you had them run a city, they don't know what they're doing. And so that's not they haven't been trained for it. They haven't been. And so, and yet the public can look at you as a city manager and project whatever their feelings of the electeds onto you. Like that's your opinions and and it's like, hey, I'm just here. I was talking to Charlie Bush. I don't know if you know Charlie, up in Cedar-Woolley, Washington. And Charlie's just like, he's like my hero. He's like amazing. But he just went through, they had a change of mayors. It's like the political pendulum. And he was like, uh-oh, I'm toast, because, it was kind of this and now it's this. And graciously, the electeds have been gracious to be like, hey, we get that you're a professional and we need you. Yeah. Like, we know that these aren't your opinions, they're ours. And we think you can still, now things might shift and priorities may shift, but we think you can implement those. And it's been really great. It's been cool to see because you don't see that often. Yeah. Usually it's like, let's fire the professional. And it's like, gosh, guys, this is why we do city management, is we need the professional to keep the ship moving in light of the changes in electeds. Yeah. What was that like? How have you wrestled with that kind of identity kind of thing of being you and being true to that professionalism in that role?
Yeah, I think it's hard. I mean, Ashland is a very unique community. It's very involved. And, up until 2019, it was a strong mayor form of government. So we've had just like a lot of change. And so the city manager is still like kind of a curiosity, like, what is it? What do they do? The number of times that people have told me they voted for me is interesting. I'm like, I bet you didn't, right? And so I think, and so now I just say thank you, because they're trying to be nice, right? Like, okay, thanks. But I think, there's just kind of sometimes a lack of understanding, even by the elected officials, of like what your job is. And there is this desire for you sometimes to be political, to like cover down for them. But like you said, it's like, paving a street in and itself is not political, but if it angers the loud group of people, then it becomes political, right? And so it's really hard. And I don't know that I've become super adept at it yet, because I think also it's, you get tagged with, in Ashland specifically, we've had to address kind of a backlog of needs in terms of financing. And so we have all of the major utilities here. So I'm the head of an electric department and a water department, and we have a federally regulated dam. Like, we just have everything in Ashland. And so, if you're not raising utility rates, right, you're falling behind your ability to serve those people 30 years from now. And so, we've had to raise rates and our fees to try to, address the fact that everything is more expensive, including our staff. And that's really unpopular and it's really hard. And the electeds have done a good job of kind of staying the course and recognizing the need. But, for the public, they're just like, this city manager will not stop, right? She will not stop raising rates. She will not stop raising fees. And even though I'm not the one ultimately making the policy decision, because that, clearly is council's lane to do that, I'm the one starting the conversation or bringing it up. And so not always appreciated, right? When you're the person who's bringing it up. But that's the hard part about the job is, and being a city manager is you can't always just bring forward what people want to hear, because that runs the risk of really doing damage long term.
It is the ultimate tension of, you're not bringing up rate raises to bring up rate raises. Right. You're bringing them up because you care deeply about the present and the future of Ashland. Right. And again, that's the challenge when people only, we want our comfort today and we'll worry about tomorrow later. And that's not the way to do it. And especially when you're talking, we've already mentioned, these are the services that we rely on. Like, they cannot fail. And that's where a city doesn't have an Amazon can fail, Walmart can pick up the slack, sure. Whatever it is. That's the difference about a city and a county is there is no other Ashland to come in and replace it. Like, this is the one you get. And if those things fail, we're toast. Right. And so how do we educate in a way that is, that it's not talking down? I think that's where government can be. It has, you've been in the military. Military has its own language that's very confusing to those.
All the acronyms, right?
Exactly. And local gov, I think, has some of that too. And how do we help? And that's why I always encourage like these citizen academies that are going on, resident kind of things. How do we get people? Because I think it is fascinating for people to get the tour of the water plant and to see like this is all that goes into it. And you're not going to win everyone to that. But guess what? if you can win a few and they get excited and they get appreciative. And so if a neighbor then complains about a rate and they go, hey, I went and toured it. Like, you don't even understand about all that it costs to help our toilets flush. Like, those little steps we can take go a long ways. Tell us about Ashland, because again, this is a unique city in Oregon. You're far southern Oregon. I think you're like 15 miles north of the California border. And you've got Southern Oregon University, the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, which started like 100 years ago in the 30s. It now is like blown up. It's like, I think it was like this summer kind of little thing. And now it's like encompassed, I think it's year round. Tell us about Ashland.
Yeah. So Ashland is really, it's a very beautiful town. Our main driver has been tourism. So we're kind of nestled in the side of a mountain. We do have a university here. We also have Oregon Shakespeare Festival, which runs almost year round, like kind of March to October timeframe, but just kind of amazing stage productions. We have a theater in the round, the Elizabethan style theater. And so really unique. And so we get people come visiting from all over. But recently we've kind of pivoted, especially with COVID, to highlight kind of our outdoor recreation. So we have been noticed for our outdoor mountain biking and just, wineries and food. So it's a really great place and a really great community. And so, in terms of the local government, it's very much set up as an island. So like I said, we have our own electric department, water, wastewater, stormwater. We have our own fiber network here. And so in terms of like complexity of city government, we like to punch above our weight of 21,000 residents because we have, everything you could possibly need, including internet that we provide.
Wow. That's a lot. Again, and those are significant. Like, again, you're like the CEO of multiple, industries and organizations there. That's a ton of weight. It is interesting. I have this fascination, and one of the things I'd love to do is go do these video series on these towns and cities that went through major transformation, like the mine shut down, the lumber mill shut down. Like in Oregon, Washington, we have a lot of lumber that no longer these mills are shutting down. It's like these places are becoming ghost towns. That's very interesting that you kind of went through a similar reality. COVID, we don't think about that. COVID shut down a lot of these theaters and, everyone was afraid to get, inside. And so it sounds like that all of a sudden took a pivot to go, hey, what can we do outside? What do we have and how can we promote that? Yeah. That's a really cool story.
Yeah, I think, Ashland was a logging town. So it was a mill town. And then the mill went away, and that's when the Shakespeare Festival, kind of became known for being more, arts and theater oriented. And that has stuck. And, for a long time, that was the main driver. But yeah, with COVID, it was a huge disruptor for everyone. We're still the ramifications of that still. And so a pivot to outdoor recreation, which, Ashland is a community. We have Lithia Park. We're known for our parks as well. So it wasn't that much of a stretch to kind of or that hard to highlight kind of the amazing natural assets that are here. And so, we have a destination management organization that the city partners with and helps fund. And so they did a good job of pivoting and highlighting, that as a way to keep kind of dollars coming into the community. And that has stuck. And so we've seen, a younger crowd be interested in visiting the community, which is great.
That's so cool. It's one of the things, again, just highlighting the various aspects of local gov and maybe the interest for young people. Again, there could be young people going, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to do, I'm going to business. I'm going to school for my MBA. Right. So they don't think about local gov. What's local gov? Yeah. Like that's, streets or whatever. It's like, dude, the economic driver of local gov and how it does and then partners with organizations like it is a massive heartbeat. Mm-hmm. Like, some of those other organizations can be the spine or, the nervous system or whatever, but it needs a heartbeat to drive it. And it's local gov that does that. I don't think local gov gets the credit for that. And so that's a really cool, reality there that, again, you're a part of, that you're shaping. And like you say, maybe we just talk for just a second about that partnership. What does that look like? With economic development, and because the city can't do it all, right, but it does, it is a driver of it.
Yeah. So I think, what it looks like for us often is, passing dollars along to people who are better situated to do things. And so, we have a partnership with the Chamber of Commerce who supports local business. We have the relationship with the Destination Management Organization. We fund them. And so they do like mass marketing for our city, basically, which is great. But we also have, relationships with Southern Oregon economic engines, organizations that focus on prospecting. So bringing in businesses to the region, which is important. And I think, partnerships with other local governments, other entities, other nonprofits are important because you can't really have all that expertise in-house typically. I know some of the bigger cities do, but we're not able to have one FTE solely focused on that kind of stuff, and so being able to partner with others is important to get that done, and really highlight why you should move here, bring your family here, bring your business, and that's an area in which I think we have good partners and are continuing to grow, which is great.
So cool. Maybe this is the tie-in then to the OCCMA, the Oregon City County Management Association, because these associations they do a lot of, they have conferences. In fact, the summer conference is just a month away in July. It will be hosted at Ashland. So how cool to have that in your own backyard as the president-elect. Tell us about, my question is going to be, what are some of the challenges that are really facing city managers and local govs as I think of housing, I think of homelessness, like there's all kinds of things that were being tackled. And again, highlighting these associations, these are what, you go to these conferences and you hear from panels and experts on how are we tackling these? How are we doing that? What do you think? What are some of the things that specifically for you or for Oregon that are kind of front and center right now? Yeah,
I think some of the big topics everyone's dealing with is housing and housing affordability, especially in Oregon. We don't have enough housing stock, and it's, a higher cost of living here than other areas. And so, we've also had the homeless epidemic throughout the state, and how do we, address kind of competing needs around the use of public spaces, the need for more mental health providers, and what is the role of, local government versus state. And so all of that's being navigated. But, with the associations, I think, I joined OCCMA when I first got here because I was like, new state, what's happening? Don't know. What are these laws, right? Like every state has their way of doing things. And, no one kind of knows the job like other city managers. And so, I applied to be in the organization and then applied to be on the board. I'm pretty sure I just got on the board because no one from my region applied. So that was lucky. Sometimes you just got to show up. There's a lesson in that. And then I was asked to apply to be the president-elect, and I was like, sure. And then I ended up, getting that. So it's all been super positive. But I think what I really value about the organization here in Oregon is the city managers in Oregon are a very friendly, welcoming bunch. And so, the relationships you make with the other city managers to be able to shoot off a text or pick up the phone and be like, hey, how have you dealt with ICE in your community? Or how have you dealt with communicating this? Or, hey, I have this issue, is really valuable, because I think no amount of MPA coursework is going to prepare you for what it's actually like. And there's always going to be at least one time a week, if not a day, where you're like, okay, this is new. And so I think having, people in your pocket who are experienced city managers, but also, newbies, is really valuable. And I think one of the things that OCCMA has done well, and we have some exceptional folks in the organization, they've created a new city managers hangout. And so city managers who are new to the state or city managers who are brand new to the profession, so like under 2 years, we get together once a month and just on Zoom and talk. There's usually like a topic that we're talking about, but it's become, a way to ask questions and meet new faces, which I think has been really cool, the, person-to-person connection. They have Oregon Latinos in local government to kind of highlight. And part of it is in the Northwest Women's Leadership Academy. So I think part of it is recognizing that sometimes people have to be introduced to the idea of working in local government or asked to come to the table. And these kind of groups achieve that, get people interested, hopefully, in pursuing career. as a city manager or in local gov.
Yeah. Like you say, it's the duality of the resource for the challenges that you're going through, the training that's required, but it's also just the network of support to be like, we're not, because you can feel very isolated, very alone on the island of your city, your county. And I just had on Julie Underwood, who is one of the founders of the Women's Network, Women's Northwest
Leadership Academy, Northwest
the Leadership Academy. Yeah.
And then you did LA.
And she's, she's amazing. And that's another just powerful organization for women to be a part of. And you mentioned it earlier. I love that not only do you have the Oregon City Management Association, every state, usually every state has one of these, but the Northwest has their own, which you guys were just up in Sitka. Once a year, I think you do the Northwest managers. And is that Washington, Oregon, Idaho? Is Montana part of that?
No, I think it's just Washington, Oregon, and Alaska.
Oh, it's just Alaska, just the three. And so how cool is that? Again, I love that because, again, Alaska, I'm sure feels like it's on Mars, all by itself. And how cool for you guys to go up to Sitka and, again, bring up Charlie Bush. I know he took the ferry up. He had this grand adventure,
We had a couple people do that,
Yeah, it's so wild. And so, again, just to encourage people, be a part of that. Go to the summer conference. That's what I always say, too. I know that you're busy. I know that you're scheduled, and it's easy to make an excuse to not show up to the conference, not show up to the Zoom webinar. And I always said, like, even as a pastor with like small group stuff, I said, it's not only that you'll benefit, but you will be a benefit to others. Right. Like the conversations that are missed because you don't show up, be there for yourself, but be there for others. And we all get better. Rising tides raise all ships.
And the summer conference, it was a great planning crew. The party planners were on it. We have a good session, and we've really focused on skill building is what we've been focused on. And so the first day of the conference is very much focused on skill building, but even just, how do you negotiate a contract? How do you renegotiate? Like these things that MPA's degrees don't teach you. Undergrad doesn't teach you how to do that. And some of the soft skills with the electeds and governance. And so I'm hopeful that not only will it be in a beautiful location, I am biased, but it will be hopefully a really good experience in terms of learning new skills and meeting new people.
And what a cool opportunity to go. I think I looked at the schedule. And I think aren't they doing like some tour of the round you have?
Yeah, so we'll have a tour of the Shakespeare Festival and some of the development in Phoenix, which is a town just north of here. And a couple of tours. So that'll be fun. We have like a board game night. We got pickleball. We got like a 5K. So we got all kinds of stuff.
That's Phoenix. Is that Eric Swanson? Eric Swanson? Mm-hmm. Oh, he's coming on. He's a guest. He's coming on in a few weeks. So, how cool. Oh, I love it. It's such a small world and yet this expansive place. Go back. Let's close with this. You had mentioned at the top, just work-life balance. I always say it's BS. It's just intention. And you said boundaries. How have you, in a role that doesn't shut off, in a lot of demand, there are expectations, but there are also, I think, especially for servant leaders, we put a lot of assumptions on us that we got to be the first ones in, the last ones out. We got to be at every meeting we're invited to. How have you seen, how have you set some boundaries? How have you created, again, it's never perfect, but how have you help us with some lessons you've learned?
Yeah. Well, one, I always recommend hire people smarter than you because your job will be easier. And so, I think one of the things I've had to, I don't think you become a city manager if you're not a control freak. So I'm just going to throw that out there. So I think part of it is just letting go a little and being okay. Like if you're delegating to your deputy because you're stepping away, you need to just be okay and trust that they're going to be fine and they'll be okay. And so you just kind of got to let go. So I think that's part of it. But I also think, if you want to show up and be the best for your people, whether it's your electeds or your staff, like you also need to rest and like rejuvenate. And so I try to, I will be in by 9 a.m. Oftentimes it's by 8, but having a window so that if I have the opportunity to take my daughter to school, I can do that. And try to be home for dinner every night. And then also, spread the wealth. Like I think sometimes city managers feel like they need to be in every event, but sometimes you're not the best one to be there. I don't know more about housing than my planning director. And so perhaps he should be the one in the room instead of me saying like, I don't know, let me ask my planning director. I'll get back to you. Right. And so just recognizing that you're probably getting invited because of your title, but that doesn't mean that you're the one that they want. or should have. And so, I think sometimes giving the opportunity to others to really shine helps set you up for success because you're not stretched so thin. And then use your vacation days. You have them for a reason.
Absolutely.
So get out.
So good. Yeah, again, you live in a place that's got a lot of natural stuff around you. Do you find that it's when you take a more extended, not just weekend getaways and stuff, but when you take that extended time away, do you feel like you have to get out of even Oregon, or do you find it's okay?
I find it's okay. I mean, I like the coast. Like if I get to look at the ocean, or I really love like the Smith River. The big redwood area in Northern California. So I think if it's just like a change of scenery, is helpful. And, I tell my staff before I leave, like I'm often the least essential person and I know this and I'm okay with it. So like reach out if you need something, but also know like you'll be fine. Right.
Yeah, unless the place has been swallowed by,
if something very, very serious is going down, please loop me in. Don't leave me out of it. But like, otherwise, like I trust you all to do a good job, and they do every time. So yeah.
I love it. So good. So many good insights, and what an incredible story, and what an incredible opportunity to lead Ashland as it continues to thrive. Anything to give us as we wrap up?
No, I would say, I spoke to a college student the other day. She's like, yeah, I never really thought about working in local government. I think it's worth investigating, especially for women or minorities who might not like always see themselves in these positions. I think sometimes you have to see it to believe it, kind of. I would definitely encourage people to, young grads to look at local government as a great career. I think oftentimes it's not as exciting or sexy as some of the private sector, but we do cool stuff too. So I think people should consider it.
Absolutely. I think we do the coolest things. And I love that, sometimes you need to see it. Right. And I think, again, it's so great that you're setting that model, and I'm glad to have you on today and shine the spotlight on your amazing story and just an amazing city and place that I think it's one of those, unless you're maybe a Shakespeare fan, you might not know about Ashland and all it has to offer. And so it has a lot more than just drama. So check it out. Thanks, Sabrina, for sharing your life, your leadership journey, and your insights.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been great to chat with you.
The stories we share here on the Halting Winter Podcast remind us where government really lives, locally, right here in our cities, our counties, the communities that shape our everyday life. If today's conversation resonated with you, please subscribe and share the episode to help these stories reach others. I'm Seth Winterhalter. You can find me at HaltingWinter.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.